It is just after 9:30. Welcome back to BT Vancouver. In a daily briefing from federal officials in Ottawa, Dr. Theresa Tam says her greatest concern for health officials is over the spread of the virus in close-knit communities, including care homes and prisons.
At any point in time, there are many other people under investigation, awaiting lab results, or not yet tested. So even if you're not hearing cases in your community, it doesn't mean that there are no cases and that there are no exposures waiting to happen. So we now have completed tests for over 236,000 people in Canada, with about 3.5% of people confirmed as positive and over 93% confirmed as negative.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau once again addressed the country in what has become a daily briefing during this health crisis. Today, Trudeau says Ottawa has made deals to increase supply of critical medical supplies.
When we announced our plan to mobilize industry, we said that we were close to reaching agreements with Thornhill Medical, Medicom, and Spartan Bioscience. Today, we're announcing that we have moved forward with contracts with these 3 Canadian companies to make medical supplies such as ventilators, surgical masks, and test kits.
Premier John Horgan is expected to address British Columbians this evening in a live televised address. You can watch it live on City News. It starts at 6:15. You can also catch it online at citynews1130.com or listen to it on the radio on News 1130. A look at the latest numbers now in BC. 2 more people have died of COVID-19 in our province in Saturday's provincial update. There have been 86 new cases over the last 48 hours, bringing the total to 970 in BC. 60 people are in intensive care. Across BC, there are outbreaks at 13 long-term care facilities.
We really are in a critical juncture right now in BC. And I've said this before, but the next 2 weeks, we're in our second incubation period. This is the critical time for us, where we'll see if our hospitals, the continuing trickle, or if we're going to see dramatic increases. It's very hard to know right now. But I do think, as I said last week, that things that we were doing are making a difference. We are not through the storm yet. We have not yet reached our peak.
Some good news. 469 people have fully recovered in BC, including 70 who had to go into intensive care. A Vancouver paramedic has been temporarily forced off the job after her work uniform was stolen yesterday morning. With more on this, we are joined by David Zura. Good morning, David. This is just a horrible story.
Good morning. Thank you, Mary. It really is. You might have had this feeling before. You go and saunter out to your car, everything's good, you're loving life, and then you get there and you realize a window's been smashed out or the door is open and things that you put inside it are gone. Well, that is exactly what happened to a paramedic, and it was her uniform that was taken, and now she is off of work as a result of that. Now, inside of her car, we got a couple of pictures here for you. She's missing a helmet, a jacket, a duffel bag full of other things like a stethoscope. Now, these items mostly will be replaced for her, but not all of them, and so she's kind of hoping that we'll all keep an eye out, and she says that she put them in the car because she didn't want to contaminate the home where her family lives.
To not contaminate my home with my family, so I left it in my vehicle. I thought I'd locked my vehicle, and then when I went back around 3 o'clock this afternoon, I saw that everything in the front part of my car had been thrown out of the glove box and everything was thrown around, and I just knew immediately as I opened the trunk that my whole uniform and every single piece of equipment I own basically was not there.
And just, you know, to put a kind of a picture on how special at least one of those items was, there was a pin that was pinned onto her uniform that she got while delivering a baby, and now that is something that, again, is replaceable, but it's not the same one, and she says that has some sentimental value. So she is hoping that we're going to keep an eye out for a paramedic uniform on someone who either isn't clearly a paramedic or somewhere where it doesn't quite belong.
Unbelievable. Okay, thank you so much for that story, David. 9:35 here on BT. Speaking of frontline workers, starting Wednesday, paid parking will be suspended at all BC hospitals until further notice. This comes after many nurses, doctors, and hospital workers battling this crisis were finding parking tickets on their cars. Ashley Burr has more.
They're the heroes we applaud every night at 7 o'clock, but up until now, frontline healthcare workers have still had to pay for parking when they show up for their shifts at BC hospitals. But that is about to change.
In an effort to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission, we are suspending paid parking for the patients, staff, and visitors at all Health Authority owned and operated sites.
The province says as of Wednesday, April 1st, putting money in the meter won't need to be a worry on our healthcare workers' minds. Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West wrote a letter to the province Monday asking for the change after hearing stories of healthcare workers finishing long shifts and being greeted by parking tickets.
Coming out after an extra long shift, there's a lot of overtime being worked right now, and being greeted with a parking ticket, or actually having to leave a shift, maybe in the middle of a meeting or actually doing their rounds, and having to go plug more money into a meter.
Health Minister Adrian Dix's reasoning for the paid parking suspension was focused on reducing the likelihood of transmitting the disease, not on lowering costs for healthcare staff.
This change makes it easier for individuals to avoid touching screens and buttons at payment kiosks that may have been touched by someone previously, and also supports physical distancing measures that have been mandated by our provincial health officer.
Paid parking at hospitals has been a criticized practice long before the COVID-19 outbreak, and Mayor West hopes the suspension will become permanent, continuing long after this pandemic.
These are people who are laying it all on the line for us at this moment, and the last thing they should have to be worried about is getting a parking ticket.
In New Westminster, Ashley Burr, City News.
Parking rules are being relaxed in Vancouver to help free up spaces for healthcare and essential workers. Enforcement for metered parking in rush hour zones and residential permit parking areas is temporarily being suspended. The city says demand for parking has dropped significantly as people are doing their part staying home. Bylaw officers will still ticket you if you are parking in spots designated for people with disabilities, block a driveway or lane, or park in special zones. It is 9:37 here on BT. More hits to the airline industry with more layoffs at Air Canada.
Air Canada will move ahead with plans to lay off 15,000 staff members due to the coronavirus pandemic. The company made the announcement in an internal memo obtained by City News. The memo states, other than returning the remaining Canadians home and continuing a skeleton operation, Air Canada will essentially be closed for business for most of the quarter. Air Canada has already canceled most of its international and U.S. flights in response to the global shutdown. The Montreal-based company is also putting 1/3 of its management, head office, and administrative staff on a temporary 2-month furlough.
You can now get groceries at Earls. The move is just one example of a creative business solution born out of a crisis. You can now pick up a grocery bundle ranging in prices from $30 to $99. Items available for purchase include produce, dairy, eggs, and meat. As sources of outdoor entertainment dry up, one theater in Langley has managed to stay open. The Twilight Drive-In on Fraser Highway is still showing movies. Staff say they are taking extra precautions, including larger spaces between vehicles, not accepting cash, and limiting the number of people at the concession stand. If you are ill or were outside of Canada recently, you're asked to stay home. The Twilight is Metro Vancouver's last remaining drive-in movie theater. All right, got to check that out.
Who'd have thunk that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the drive-in now, the go-to spot for entertainment. That's pretty cool. I like it. Thanks for that one, Mary. And we'll look at your weather report across our beautiful country here.